Welcome back, everybody. It is Zach with Black Diamond Mortgage and Ian with Windemere Real Estate, and we are here to provide you a market update on everything that happened during the month of May, and as we're actually a week into June as well. We're going to give it to you in 10 minutes or less, so stick around. It's not going to take too much of your time, and it's extremely valuable information. Ian, kick us off. What are you seeing as far as listings, inventory, things that matter for people out there?
Yes, sir. So like we were just kind of talking about, I think it's really important right now to stay on top of being specific with where you're pulling stats from. In the news, you can read something that says, home prices down 20%, looming recession, all of these doom and gloom things, and then apply it to the Flathead. But as we'll see right here shortly, it doesn't necessarily apply. More so, it's actually quite the opposite, and it could get you in some trouble. So what we were talking about is, we like to compare the Flathead to other emerging Western markets that are currently struggling right now. Boise, Phoenix, parts of Seattle. These are places that had pretty significant run-ups during COVID. Prices were crazy, as they were in the Flathead. They were almost analogs to each other. Same exact trajectory, 20 to 30% year-over-year appreciation. Unsustainable, but similar between markets. Mm-hmm. Well, if you go down to Boise right now, which, there are a lot of people that trade back and forth between Seattle, Boise, Flathead, Bozeman, all of these up-and-coming Western markets, it's a completely different picture than it is here in the Flathead. And I've heard so many young buyers be like, oh, well, I think what's happening down in Boise is going to happen here. We'll take a look at the stats right now, and we'll see if that's actually the case. So this morning, I was checking out what is actually happening in Boise. Currently, this is Ada County, where Boise is, 1,134 homes are currently on the market. In terms of new inventory listed, that's up 89.3% from this same exact time last year. That's insane.
That's a lot.
Yep. If you compare right next to it, it's going to pull the same exact range, all price ranges in Flathead County. We currently have 232 listings that went live in May of 23. If we go back to 2022, it was 250.
Fascinating. So what is that telling us?
So if we want to talk about the market correcting and prices finally coming down, well, we would have to see a pretty significant increase in inventory. An 89 to 90% increase like in Boise is going to lead to a 20% drop in pricing, which is what they've experienced. We've seen like a 5 to 6% decrease in pricing, and I think that's probably about as extreme as it's going to get. Mm-hmm. Because as you can see, I've got the last 5 years of data, and you can see a lot of seasonality in it. There's less than a 10% difference this year compared to new listings in May and April as well, following the same exact trend that we were on all the way back to 2018, which is a little bit different than what you might see if you're listening on the radio, TV, reading the news, whatever. Nationally, regionally, doesn't really apply to the Flathead right now. We still have an insane inventory issue, right? Housing is hard to come by. And then if we delve into it closer, this is what, I think people really need to keep in mind is we split up the tiers in Flathead County for single-family residential based on pricing. The vast majority of people trying to buy a home are in the same range, $400,000 to $700,000. Mm-hmm. Yep. If we actually take a closer look at that, you can see that that's where we're struggling the most. So we would expect, based off seasonality, that April would have more new listings than March. May would have more than April. And June, it would peak. Well, this year, for the first time in the last 5 years, we've actually seen the May inventory for that price range be lower than it was in April. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now, where everyone's talking.
That's what it feels like, too.
Where's the inventory?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's this, this spring market? For the vast majority of buyers, it ain't coming, right? And we can see that here. We had 67 new listings in the price range of $400,000 to $700,000 in the Flathead County in April, 67. For May, we actually dropped down to 63. If you look at last year, in April we had 46, and then in May we had 76.
Yeah.
Pretty stark contrast. So that changes if you look at $700,000 and above. Those listings are coming. Those are the ones that keep coming on the market, but there's fewer buyers who are able to afford that. So you have to really be strategic about breaking up your data sets to be like, what is happening in the market? And I think that would be my kind of message for today is if you're dumping through numbers, you're trying to make a long-term financial decision for yourself, make sure you're getting the most up-to-date and accurate information. Because there's a lot of stuff floating around, a lot of moving parts. So be as strategic as you can, be as local as you can, and that's going to help you make the right decision for your family and your long-term financial well-being.
And just to kind of humor the data, we talked about the starting point being 400,000, which that is really what it feels like. If you're out shopping for a home, there's not a whole lot that exists.
Right.
Can you give us the data on 250 to 400,000 just to kind of see?
Yeah.
That way people know what's going on out there.
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating.
And historically, that was the starter home range.
Right.
And, first-time home buyers haven't gone anywhere. They've just had to continuously up their budget. Now with rates higher, we're actually seeing these people who we don't want to pay $400 plus for our first house, but we can. Now they can't because they're paying an extra 2.5% on their mortgage. So now we've seen this crazy crunch where houses, this is $240,000 to $400,000. For the since November, we actually haven't been in double digits for new listings in all of Flathead County for single fam. So May, we had 9 listings in the entire county in that price range. April, we had 8. February and March, we had 7.
Yeah. That is what it feels like. I'm talking to a lot of people that are, hey, I'd really like to have a mortgage payment of X. And you calculate the mortgage payment, and that equals a $275,000 house.
Yep.
So we're frequently having conversations with prospective buyers about the realism of what a mortgage payment has to look like, given the market data that Ian just gave you. It's really, really important to know what's going on.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think right now we're kind of in the final stages of this final rearranging of pricing tiers where, that same price range we're looking at right now, 250 to 400, that used to be, that's where the first time buyers were. Young people, that's what they could afford. They don't have massive amounts of capital for down payments. FHA and VA products fit really well in that price range, but we just don't have inventory there. And I don't think we ever will again.
I agree.
So that ship has now sailed the 400 to 700 range, more specifically 400 to 550, smaller sub-range of that, is where all of that pent-up demand is.
Yeah.
And we still just are not getting much inventory there. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what's responsible for that feeling in the valley of like, there's nothing coming on. I mean, there are, but they're not in the areas that all the buyers are in.
Absolutely.
So
Thanks, Ian. That is what it all feels like. So it's nice to know that the data matches what we're feeling here locally.
for sure.
Just a quick update for you guys on what's going on in the Fed, what's going on with interest rates. I think it's helpful for you to be educated. Similar to what Ian mentioned, there's so much news out there. You have to be very careful with what you read. The biggest thing is we're recording this on June 8th, and next week on the 14th, the Fed will do their next meeting. For 10 straight Fed meetings, we have seen interest rate increases. And some of them have been pretty intense. Some of them have been pretty small. Regardless, there's been an increase each meeting. So in June, the expectation from analysts is that we're going to have the first, what they're calling a pause on federal interest rate hikes. And so the reason behind that, according to Chairman Powell, is they would like to take a few weeks and kind of just analyze what the rate increases over the last 10 meetings have done to the economy. Well, you and I know what they've done to the economy. They've made things a lot more expensive, and you can see that all over the place. You can see it in consumer goods. You can see it in financing for vehicles. You can see it in credit card interest rates. And, of course, you can see it in mortgage interest rates, too. Those have all come up in response to the cost of money being more expensive. So what I think is important for you guys to understand is that the media is portraying the pause as a permanent pause. And so what that means to people is great. We may not see any more interest rate hikes. We may just be able to sit here and then maybe go the other way. However, there are basically two camps forming within the Federal Reserve committees that meet on monetary policy. You have one who thinks that we should pause rate hikes altogether. You have the other who says inflation is still too high. We need to fix it with making money expensive. We're still dealing with, last month we talked about the sticky inflation. That's still very much so the case. We've got PCE, personal consumer expenditures. It's right around 4.7%. CPI year over year is about 4.9%. Those are big numbers. The Fed wants those to be around 2%. And so analysts are looking at the data going, I don't understand how we can justify not increasing rates further. And so there's growing confidence that at the meeting following the June meeting, we will see additional rate hikes, because the current projection is that we want the federal funds rate, we being the government, would like the federal funds rate around 5.4% by the end of 2023. We're currently right around 5.1, somewhere in there. And so if the projections and the desire are true, that means additional rate hikes have to come in the future. What does this mean to you as a consumer? It fits right in line with what Ian's talking about. Inventory seems to be going down in the price ranges that most people can afford. Not seems to be, that it did drop from April to May. Interest rates for the course of May took a pretty good increase when compared with April. And we saw a little bit of recovery here in the first week of June, but May produced the highest interest rates we've seen in 6 months, and people felt that. So we've often talked about the analogy of you have to start and you have to get going so that you can get on the train. That's one of Ian's favorite analogies, and I love it. That is true today, specifically when you look at inventory concerns in the Flathead and the potential for future rate hikes. The point, things are probably going to keep getting more expensive, so why would you wait? And I'm not trying to sell you anything or anything like that. I'm simply looking out for your best interest. Things in the Flathead are going to get more expensive, and waiting for the market to crash is a common thing I'm hearing right now. It's a bad strategy. And so we're hoping to use data and analytics and trends and history to help you understand why that's the case. So bottom line, Ian, we've got to get people out there. We've got to get them excited about buying. Even if it's hard, a lot of buying right now is looking for the long-term benefit. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. Yep. Just get into something that works. If you can make the monthly payment, there's no such thing as a guarantee, obviously, but in terms of likelihood, the long-term outlook and appreciation potential for Flathead real estate is, sky's the limit. So you get into something now, I think the vast majority of people who do that are thanking themselves in 5 or 10 years, and the people who are waiting for that correction, the big crash, it's not coming here for real estate. So get into something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the disclaimer is nobody really knows, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's always that 50-50. But there are tools and analytics that we use to try and help determine how to make good decisions, and that's what we do on the daily.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Yep. And if you want something cheap, move to Boise. That's where the deals are to be had right now, and I'll sell your place in Flathead. Shameless plug.
Nice. That's right. Cool. Well, thank you, Ian. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you bet. We'll see you guys next month.
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. We hope this is valuable, and we'll be back.